What happens when two of Hollywood's biggest personalities clash on live television over a topic neither is willing to back down on? It only took 31 seconds for things to go from tense to absolutely explosive. Before we get into this insane confrontation, smash that subscribe button right now. We deliver daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the fights they try to hide, and the moments that happen when egos collide on live TV. Last night on The View, Sylvester Stallone sat down for what should have been a celebration of his legendary career. Instead, it turned into one of the most jaw-dropping exits in talk show history. The conversation started friendly enough, but within minutes, the temperature in that studio went from warm to absolutely scorching. Stallone walked out to thunderous applause, his signature swagger on full display. The audience was excited to see Rocky himself sitting at the table with Whoopi Goldberg and the rest of the View hosts. He settled into his chair, exchanged pleasantries, and seemed ready for a good conversation. The first few minutes went smoothly. They talked about his upcoming projects, his training routines, and how he stays motivated after all these years in Hollywood. Stallone was charming, cracking jokes, and telling stories that had the audience eating out of the palm of his hand. Everyone was having a good time. Joy Behar asked him about his workout routine, and Stallone launched into an entertaining story about pushing himself at the gym, even at his age. You know, people ask me all the time, "Sly, when are you going to slow down?" And I tell them, when I'm dead, that's when I'll slow down. The audience laughed and applauded. He flexed his bicep playfully, and the crowd went wild. But seriously, he continued, I think staying active is what keeps you young. It's not just about the physical aspect, it's mental too. When you push yourself, when you challenge yourself every day, you stay sharp. You stay relevant. Sarah Haynes chimed in with a question about his family, and Stallone's face softened as he talked about his daughters and how proud he was of them. They're everything to me, he said warmly. All the success, all the movies, none of it means anything compared to being a father. Watching them grow up, seeing them become these incredible women, that's the real achievement in my life. The energy in the room was light and positive. The audience was engaged. The hosts were smiling, and Stallone seemed genuinely relaxed. For those first several minutes, it looked like this was going to be one of those feel-good interviews that everyone enjoys. The kind where a beloved celebrity shares wisdom, and everyone leaves feeling good. Sonny Hostin asked about his creative process, and Stallone dove into an explanation of how he developed the Rocky character all those years ago. I was broke, living in a tiny apartment with my wife, barely making ends meet. But I had this vision, this story I had to tell. I knew what I wanted to say with Rocky. It wasn't just about boxing. It was about having the guts to take your shot when everyone says you can't. It was about getting knocked down and getting back up. That's what resonated with people. He leaned forward, his eyes lighting up as he spoke. I remember writing that script in 3 days straight. I barely slept. The words just poured out of me because I was living it. I was that underdog. I was that guy everyone counted out. And when I finally got the chance to make the movie, I put everything I had into it. The host nodded appreciatively, and Whoopi even smiled at that answer. But anyone watching closely could see in her body language that she was waiting for something, holding back, preparing to shift the conversation in a different direction. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Alyssa Farah Griffin asked about his experiences working with different directors over the years, and Stallone shared some behind-the-scenes stories that had everyone at the table laughing. He talked about the grueling shoots, the injuries he'd sustained doing his own stunts, and the camaraderie he'd built with his co-stars over the decades. You know, people think making action movies is all glamorous, he said with a grin. But I've broken my neck, my back, torn muscles, had metal rods put in. My body's held together with duct tape and prayers at this point. The audience laughed, but he wasn't entirely joking. But I wouldn't change it for anything. Every scar tells a story. But then, as the interview hit the 10-minute mark, Whoopi decided to switch gears. Her expression became more serious as she leaned forward. Sylvester, I want to ask you about something that's been making headlines. You've been pretty outspoken lately about your political views, and a lot of people have had strong reactions to what you've been saying. The mood in the room shifted immediately. Stallone's smile didn't disappear, but it definitely became more guarded. Yeah, I've shared my thoughts on a few things. I believe in speaking honestly about what I think is right. Whoopi nodded, but her eyes had that look like she was about to press harder. And that's fine. Everyone has the right to their opinion. But when you have millions of fans, don't you think you have a responsibility to think about how your words might affect people? Stallone's posture changed. He sat up straighter in his chair. I think having millions of fans means I should be honest with them, not tell them what they want to hear. I came from nothing, worked for everything I have, and I'm not going to pretend to believe something I don't, just to make people comfortable. Sonny Hostin jumped in. But Sylvester, when you make statements that seem to support policies that hurt certain communities, people are going to question where you stand. Can you understand why that's concerning? Hurt communities? Stallone's voice rose, slightly. I've never supported anything that hurts anyone. I support common sense, hard work, and people taking responsibility for their lives. If that's controversial now, then I guess I'm controversial. Joy Behar tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but it fell flat. The tension was already too thick. Whoopi wasn't backing off. Sylvester, nobody's saying you can't have your opinions, but you've aligned yourself with certain political figures who have said and done things that many people find offensive. Don't you see how that reflects on you? Stallone's jaw clenched. You could see the frustration building in his face. Aligned myself? I'm not aligned with anyone. I think for myself. Just because I agree with someone on one issue doesn't mean I agree with them on everything. Why is that so hard to understand? Because actions speak louder than words, Whoopi shot back. When you publicly support someone, you're endorsing everything they represent. That's ridiculous, Stallone said, his voice getting louder. That's exactly the kind of thinking that's wrong with this country right now. You can't have a nuanced opinion anymore. Everything is black and white. And if you don't agree with someone on every single thing, you're the enemy. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, studying him. So you're saying you can support someone's policies without supporting their character? Without supporting the other things they say and do? Yes. Stallone's frustration was evident. That's exactly what I'm saying. I can agree with someone on economic policy without agreeing with everything else about them. I can support certain positions without signing up for everything that person represents. Why is that so controversial? Because you can't separate those things. Sonny jumped back in. When you give someone your public support, you're giving them credibility. You're telling your fans that this person is worth listening to. And if that person has a history of saying harmful things, harmful according to who? Stallone interrupted. According to you? According to what you think people should believe? I have just as much right to my opinions as anyone else. Joy tried to add some perspective. Sylvester, I think the concern is that when someone with your influence speaks out, especially on politically charged issues, it can have real-world consequences for people. Stallone turned to her, his voice tight. And what about the consequences of everyone being forced to think the same way? What about the consequences of people being afraid to speak their minds because they'll be attacked for it? Those are real consequences too. Whoopi wasn't backing down. Nobody's forcing anyone to think a certain way. But if you put your thoughts out there publicly, you have to be prepared for people to challenge them. That's how free speech actually works. Challenge them? Sure, Stallone said. But this isn't challenging, Whoopi. This feels like an attack. Like you brought me on here specifically to tear me down. That's paranoid, Whoopi responded coolly. We bring lots of people on this show who have different viewpoints. We ask them questions. Sometimes those conversations get heated. That's the nature of discussing important topics. But you're not just asking questions, Stallone countered, his voice rising. You're making accusations. You're implying that my views are wrong, that I'm hurting people, that I should be ashamed of what I believe. That's not asking questions, that's an interrogation. Sarah Haynes tried to interject, attempting to defuse the situation. I think what we're all trying to say is, no, let him finish, Whoopi said sharply. cutting her off. I want to hear what he has to say. Stallone stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. The audience gasped. You know what, Whoopi? I came here thinking we could have an actual conversation, but this is just an ambush. You invited me on your show to make me look bad, to paint me as some kind of villain because I don't fall in line with everything you believe. Whoopi remained seated, but her voice was ice cold. Nobody ambushed you. We asked you legitimate questions that your fans and the public deserve answers to. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Can't handle it? Stallone laughed bitterly. I've been in this business for 50 years. I've faced critics. I've had movies bomb. I've been written off more times than I can count. I can handle anything. What I can't handle is sitting here being disrespected on national television by someone who claims to be about tolerance and open dialogue, but only when people agree with her. The other hosts sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. Whoopi slowly stood up from her seat, facing Stallone directly across the table. Disrespected? You came on this show and dodged every serious question we asked you. You want to talk about your movies and your muscles, but the second we ask you about the real issues, you fall apart. Fall apart? Stallone's face was red now, his famous intensity on full display. I'm not falling apart. I'm calling out exactly what this is. You don't want a conversation. You want me to apologize for having different views than you. Well, I'm not going to do it. Whoopi pointed her finger at him. Nobody asked you to apologize for your views. We asked you to explain them, to defend them like an adult. But instead, you're throwing a tantrum like a child who got called out in class. That was the breaking point. Stallone's eyes flashed with anger. A tantrum? You think this is a tantrum? Let me tell you something, Whoopi. I've built a career playing characters who stand up for what they believe in, who don't back down when people try to push them around. That's not an act. That's who I am. And I'm not going to sit here and let you or anyone else make me feel like I need to apologize for being myself. Then maybe you should leave, Whoopi said coldly, her arms crossed. Because this is my show, and if you can't have a respectful conversation, there's the door. The audience was completely silent now. You could hear a pin drop in that studio. Stallone stared at Whoopi for a long moment, and you could see the fury in his eyes. You know what? I will leave. I'd rather walk out of here with my dignity intact than sit here and play your games. Fine by me, Whoopi shot back. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Stallone ripped off his microphone, the sound of it hitting the table echoing through the studio. You want to talk about respect? You just showed everyone watching exactly what you think about people who don't agree with you. This isn't about tolerance or understanding. This is about control. Control? Whoopi scoffed. The only person trying to control this conversation is you. You're the one who won't answer direct questions. You're the one deflecting and dodging. I'm not deflecting, Stallone fired back. I'm refusing to participate in your witch hunt. There's a difference. Witch hunt? Whoopi's voice dripped with sarcasm. Asking you to clarify your public statements is a witch hunt now? You really are something else, Sylvester. And you're exactly what's wrong with this industry, Stallone shot back. You sit up here in your ivory tower, judging everyone, deciding who's acceptable and who isn't. You've become what you used to fight against. The other hosts looked at each other nervously. This had gone beyond uncomfortable. It was getting personal in ways that couldn't be walked back. Whoopi's eyes flashed dangerously. Don't you dare tell me what I've become. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through or what I stand for. I know what I'm seeing right now, Stallone said. And what I'm seeing is someone who's forgotten how to listen, how to have a real conversation with someone they disagree with. I listen just fine, Whoopi snapped. But I'm not going to sit here and nod along when someone says things that I know are harmful. That's not listening, that's enabling. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried one last time to calm things down. Sylvester, please, let's just take a breath and know. Stallone cut her off, but his tone toward her was less harsh. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm done here. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. Whoopi waved her hand dismissively. Nobody's forcing you to stay. You made your choice. Stallone grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. I earned every dollar I made. Nobody handed me anything. And yeah, I'm part of Hollywood. But that doesn't mean I have to think like everyone else here. That doesn't mean I have to pretend to believe things I don't. Nobody is asking you to pretend anything. Whoopi's voice rose, matching his intensity. We're asking you to explain yourself, to have a real conversation, instead of hiding behind excuses. Excuses? Stallone's face was bright red now. The only excuse here is whatever you're going to come up with for why this interview went sideways. Let me save you the trouble. It's because you couldn't handle someone disagreeing with you. I disagree with people all the time, Whoopi countered. That's what this show is about. But most people can defend their positions without acting like they're being attacked. Most people can have a civil conversation even when they disagree. Civil? Stallone let out a harsh laugh. There's been nothing civil about this conversation from the moment you decided to turn it into a political ambush. You want civil? Try showing some respect for viewpoints that differ from yours. I respect viewpoints that are backed up by logic and compassion, Whoopi said coldly. I don't respect viewpoints that are based on fear and division. Fear and division? Stallone's voice cracked with anger. That's what you think my beliefs are based on? You don't know a damn thing about me or what I believe. You've made up your mind based on a few sound bites and out-of-context quotes. Then give me the context, Whoopi challenged. Right now, explain to everyone watching why your positions aren't what they appear to be. I'm giving you the floor. Go ahead. Stallone's hands clenched into fists. You want me to defend myself against accusations you've made up? Against implications and insinuations? That's not how this works. You're the one making the claims, you back them up. I did back them up, Whoopi countered. You said what you said. It's on record. It's out there for everyone to see. Those are your words, your positions. I'm not making anything up. But you're twisting the meaning, Stallone insisted. You're taking things I said about one topic and applying them to something completely different. You're building a narrative that doesn't exist. The narrative exists because you created it, Whoopi fired back. Every time you open your mouth about these issues, you add to it. And now you're upset that people are paying attention? I'm upset that you're lying about what I believe. Stallone's voice rose even higher. I'm upset that you invited me here under false pretenses just to tear me down on your show. Sarah Haynes looked uncomfortable. Sylvester, please, let's just calm down. And I am calm, Stallone said, though his red face and tense body suggested otherwise. I'm just done with this. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. Whoopi waved her hand dismissively. Nobody's forcing you to stay. You made your choice. Stallone grabbed his jacket and started putting it on. I'm accountable for my actions every single day. What I'm not accountable for is living up to your expectations of what I should think and believe. Whoopi's expression was hard as stone. What was worth it was showing everyone exactly who you are when you're pressed on your beliefs. Someone who can't defend their positions without playing the victim. Playing the victim? Stallone's voice shook with anger. I'm not playing anything. I'm standing right here telling you exactly what I think. You're the one who can't handle it. I can handle anything you throw at me, Whoopi said coldly. The question is, can you handle being held accountable? Stallone started walking toward the exit, his footsteps heavy on the studio floor. Whoopi called after him. And don't expect to come back anytime soon. Stallone stopped and turned around one final time. Trust me, Whoopi. That's not going to be a problem. His voice was filled with barely contained fury. You can have your show, your audience, your echo chamber. I don't need any of it. Good, Whoopi shouted. We don't need people here who can't handle real questions. Real questions, Stallone muttered, shaking his head. Keep telling yourself that. He looked directly at the camera one last time. To everyone watching at home, this is what happens in Hollywood when you dare to think for yourself. This is what happens when you refuse to fall in line. They attack you. They try to shame you. And when that doesn't work, they try to silence you. Well, I won't be silenced, Whoopi interjected sharply. Nobody's silencing you. You're choosing to walk away because you can't defend your positions. I'm walking away because there's no point in talking to someone who's already made up their mind about me, Stallone replied, his voice steady but filled with anger. You didn't bring me here to listen. You brought me here to lecture. And I don't need that from anyone. With that, he turned back toward the exit and kept walking, his figure disappearing into the shadows backstage. The audience sat in stunned silence. Nobody knew if they should applaud, boo, or just sit quietly. The whole thing felt surreal, like watching something that shouldn't have been aired on television. Some people looked uncomfortable, others seemed to be processing what they'd just witnessed. A few whispered to each other, but most just sat frozen. Whoopi stood at the table, her arms crossed, watching as Stallone disappeared behind the curtain. Her face was a mixture of anger and vindication. She had pushed hard, and he had walked away. In her mind, that proved her point. Her chest was rising and falling with heavy breaths, the adrenaline of the confrontation still coursing through her. Joy Behar broke the silence, her voice tentative. Well, that certainly was something. Sonny Hostin nodded slowly, still trying to process what had just happened. I don't think any of us expected it to go quite like that. Sarah Haynes looked genuinely upset, her eyes wide. I just wish we could have found some common ground before it escalated to that level. Whoopi turned to face the camera directly, composing herself. What you just witnessed is what happens when someone with a big platform can't defend their positions. They get angry, they lash out, and they walk away rather than engaging in real dialogue. Alyssa tried to offer a different perspective, though I think we can all acknowledge that things got very heated very quickly on both sides. I stand by every question I asked, Whoopi interrupted, her voice firm. If that made him uncomfortable, then maybe he needs to reconsider the positions he's taking publicly. The cameras captured everything: Whoopi's defiant stance, the other hosts' uncomfortable expressions, the audience's shocked faces. This wasn't the usual View drama where disagreements happened but were ultimately resolved with some humor and mutual respect. This was something that would be talked about for a long time. This was raw, unfiltered conflict captured on live television. Backstage, Stallone could be heard slamming his dressing room door. The sound echoed through the hallways. A final punctuation mark on a confrontation that had spiraled completely out of control. His team rushed to his side, but the anger was still radiating off him in waves. Through the walls, crew members could hear him venting his frustration to his publicist. The building buzzed with tension. Crew members whispered to each other about what they had just witnessed, huddled in small groups. Production assistants scrambled to deal with the aftermath, unsure of what the protocol was for this unprecedented situation. Everyone knew they had just been part of something explosive, something that would dominate headlines and social media for days to come. Stallone finally gathered his things, his jaw still clenched with frustration. His security team flanked him as he prepared to leave the building. He didn't say another word to anyone from the show. He was done, finished, ready to put this entire experience behind him. His publicist was already on the phone, no doubt doing damage control, but Stallone wasn't interested in any of that right now. As he walked through the backstage corridors toward the exit, other staff members stopped what they were doing and stared. Some looked sympathetic, understanding his frustration. Others seemed to side with Whoopi, their expressions suggesting they thought he'd handled it poorly. The divide was clear, even among the people who worked there every day. One makeup artist gave him an encouraging nod, while a production assistant turned away, unable to make eye contact. Stallone reached the final door that would take him out of the building. He paused for just a second, his hand on the cold metal handle, as if considering whether to turn back, whether there was any way to salvage this situation. But then, his expression hardened again, his resolve firming up, and he pushed through the door into the daylight outside. His car was waiting at the curb, engine running, exhaust visible in the cool air. Security quickly opened the door, and Stallone climbed into the back seat without a word. As the car pulled away from the studio, he stared straight ahead, his mind clearly replaying everything that had just happened, analyzing every word, every accusation, every moment of the confrontation. The door closing behind him as he exited the studio wasn't just the end of an interview, it was a statement. A line, drawn in the sand, captured in a moment that would define one of the most explosive talk show confrontations ever witnessed on live television.